With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin. Yesterday afternoon, town leaders, including Council President Fred Chirigotis and Interim Town Manager Tom Lynch, held a press conference here at Town Hall, as they do each Tuesday of a week in which Town Council meets. While Town Council agenda items are normally the focus of the meeting, at times, as was the case yesterday, the topics shift to things going on about town. Council President Chirigotis was asked about the recent court ruling regarding the FAA and Cape Wind, which represents a victory of sorts for the town. Chirigotis responds, as does Interim Town Manager Tom Lynch and Town Attorney Ruth Weil.
My understanding is that there have been people in town who have expressed concern over the project with regard to safety and, especially with regard to the FAA and flight patterns, and I think that, that has been heard clearly by the Federal Appeals Court. So, that gets remanded, and we'll see whether or not, the FAA comes up with regulations to deal with the legitimate concerns that there are with regard to that airspace.
I'd say that, the court has validated those of us who have felt that there hasn't been adequate scrutiny given to some of the public safety concerns, and we're hopeful that, in the future, when they're looking at these things, that they will be more thorough than just giving advisory opinion. So,
I think what's important is that no matter how someone comes down in favor of moving forward with regard to renewable energy projects, we need to make sure that we dot every I and cross every T. We need to make sure that the public safety is maintained and they're fiscally and financially responsible. You got to go through, the process is important, and the process is there to ensure that we do exactly the right thing at the right time, and that we can't look back later and say we should have done it differently, especially with a project of this size.
In response to the question whether the litigation is pending, there is another suit pending in the Federal District Court involving NEPA, which is the National Environmental Protection Act, and it also has an FAA air safety component, and this decision could have an impact on that case as well.
The conversation then turned toward the Hyannis Youth and Community Center. A sprinkler burst in the gym several weeks ago, causing a minor flood that damaged the gym floor. Interim Town Manager Tom Lynch and Director of Community Services Lynn Poyant addressed the issue.
Have actually begun the repairs on the floor last week. They've begun tearing up some of the flooring. We hope to have it completed by the end of November. There will be a point in time so that the winter sports and the users that are expecting to be able to use the facility will be able to use it. There will be a period of time when they're refinishing the entire floor that it'll be shut down, and there will be an inconvenience around the voting that's coming up, which Lynn may want to give further clarification just where we are in the process, as well as a notice on it. The voting will still be held at the HYCC. It just won't be held all in the gymnasium.
We, starting November 7th, which is next Monday, we will not be able to use the gym for any purpose, because the actual new gym floor arrived yesterday, but they're still in the process of taking up the old gym floor. The precincts will be moved. One will be in the Shepley Community Room, one will be in the foyer outside of the gymnasium, and one will be using the youth center. So the youth center will actually be closed on Monday and Tuesday of next week. Normally it opens at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but in this special occasion, we need to make this kind of concession, so that's what we're doing. And the hope is that when Tom and I had met with Sturgis and Pope John Paul, the athletic directors, MIAA rules state that they have to begin their practices by November 28th. So it is our intention to get the facility back up and running by November 28th.
Poyant then goes on to explain why the floor is being replaced instead of merely repaired.
The decision to replace the floor was a very good one, because we were told at first that it was a 50-50 chance that there would be water underneath, and we opened up the floor, there was water underneath. And it was, because when they were moving the water out the floor, it was in both backs doors, the doors that face the south side, and so there was water as far back as there. So because of the kind of work that's being done, we're going to have to close the walking track because the sanding rises. We've discovered that as they've been using the circular saw to get the floor up, that there's been dust issues and everything else. And for some people who have compromised breathing systems, we don't, we've put notices on the wall that they aren't, that this is a possibility. So once they start sanding, that sand is very fine and it goes everywhere. And part of what the process is going to be is that when it's closed, there's going to be a couple of days of cleaning prior to the polyurethane of the floor. And then there's a time frame where the floor actually has to dry. So once we're in the drying phase, I would imagine the walking track would be able to reopen. But it's during the sanding and that initial cleaning that we cannot have anybody in that part of the building.
Finally, interim town manager Tom Lynch was asked about the town's plans to further engage its citizens using the virtual realm.
We're working with a company called mindmixer.com, and we are creating something called Barnstable iForum. It's that virtual town meeting system where we will be posting 6 or 7 different issues that the town leaders and policymakers would like feedback on as to when developing a given policy. So, for instance, it might be as specific as we're looking at additional parks in the village of Hyannis and to improve the ability of citizens to enjoy outdoor recreation. Where would you like to see them? And there'll actually be an interactive map where people could go on and say, gee, here's a vacant lot, would love it if we're there, or we'd like more walking trails through some of our parks, or we realize they'll be small, so we'd like X, Y, whatever they would come up with. And then individuals have a chance to support that idea and build on it and comment on it. Or it may be as broad as, what is your vision for the town of Barnstable in the year 2030? What sort of improvements would you like to see? So it can be as specific as one little village, or as broad as a large vision. We also something I think have a feature on there that I think the town council will be very interested in, and that allows us to order or set prioritize various items that might come before them. For instance, the town council annually looks at their own goals and objectives, and should the council choose, they could list those same objectives on the site and have the citizens order them and say, or they don't actually do a full ordering of all of them, that you would probably ask, what would be your top two? And then there could be, later we would collate the data to see whether folks thought economic development was more important than the fiscal, budget, or versus senior services, or versus the many things that, the schools, whatever is on there that the town council has looked at. So that's a prioritization. You can also do a vote, yes or no. And from their experience in working with other, cities and towns, that's not as effective generally. They're looking. They feel that community leaders get far more feedback when people are talking about bikeways or pedestrian transportation or traffic, and to help you in how you do things. So it's a fairly exciting process. I've got our launch date, the tentative launch date is going to be November 28th.
We'll have more on Thursday's Town Council meeting agenda items tomorrow when we talk with President Fred Chirigotis on Barnstable This Morning. We'll also visit with Interim Town Manager Tom Lynch on tomorrow's episode of Barnstable Today. I'm Sarah Colvin.